Hi everyone, I'm back to read chapter 3 of our book Troubles for Cecile from 1853, and this is book 4, and chapter 2 is called Troubles Everywhere. 2 weeks later, Cecile sat by the open windows of her room, trying to read poetry in the morning light. August had arrived, bringing a day of sunshine to break July's long rainy spell. But even the fine weather couldn't lighten her spirits. She sighed and let the tiny book fall into her lap. More of her friends were gone now. Grandpère had read in the newspaper that the city wasn't letting ships dock at the levee for fear that the fever would spread even farther. Once or twice she'd heard Maman and Papa speak about someone who was ill or who had died. It seemed that this summer yellow fever was striking even people they knew. People who had lived in New Orleans all their lives. Yet whenever she asked questions, they hushed her and told her not to worry. Frustrated, Cecile tried to keep herself busy by studying her lessons or joining MarieGrace at the orphanage a few days a week. Miss Cecile, Cecile looked up to see Ellen in the doorway. Mr. Armand wants that you sit for him again. Oh, oui. Cecile hopped joyfully to her feet. Armand still hadn't completed her portrait, and she was curious to see what details would spring to life next on his canvas. Ellen nodded. He let me see his fine work. Such a gift he has. Come, I'll help you dress and to fix your hair, just as you had it last time. Ellen had become quite skilled at taming Cecile's dark, thick curls, and in no time, Cecile was ready. She skipped out to the balcony. Here I come, Monsieur Artiste, she called over the railing, laughing. Down in the courtyard, Armand waved his paintbrush. I want to paint you in the same morning light as last time, he told her as she settled in on her chair. Try holding this fan. Cecile smiled. The beautifully painted Chinese fan that Armand handed her was one her grandpère had brought back from his travels at sea. Like this. Like this? She asked, tapping the fan open and tilting it just so. Perfect. Now, let me paint your hands before the light changes. Armand dabbed the long, dark brush in his right hand onto the palette he held in his left hand. That's red paint, Cecile said. I'm not wearing anything red. Cece, an artist sees things differently than you do. Cecile smiled mischievously. Monette once nibbled at a tea cake until it looked like a rabbit, and I told her so. She insisted that it was only a tea cake, but I saw a rabbit with 2 long ears. Do you suppose that means I'm an artist? Cecile could hardly keep from laughing, but Armand only smiled. Cecile guessed that he was focused on his work, and so she kept chattering without expecting him to answer. The sun grew hotter, and the morning breeze stilled. By and by, she felt a drop of sweat trickle down her neck. She wished that she could actually use the Chinese fan. Armand, ill fate shod, she said, blinking. It is hot. I know, he said, pausing to frown at his canvas. He wiped the back of his hand against his forehead, and she thought she saw his hand shaking. Why don't we take a break? Cecile suggested, getting up from her chair. I will get Monsieur Artiste a drink, no? She didn't wait for an answer, but hurried to dip some cool lemonade from the crock that Matilda kept in the kitchen. Matilda glanced up from a pile of vegetables she was chopping. And how is the great painting coming along? She asked. Just as Cecile opened her mouth to answer, there was a sudden chatter and crash in the courtyard. And before Cecile could move, Matilda leapt to the kitchen door and gave a loud, long wail. Aye, madam! Madam, come quickly, she cried. Cecile twirled around, her heart pounding. Armand lay sprawled on the flagstones with his eyes closed. His face was wet with sweat, and Matilda was fanning him with her big gingham apron. From somewhere inside the house, Maman rushed out into the courtyard. Cecile could hear Ellen running downstairs from the balcony. Maman reached Armand first. Mon Dieu, she gasped, dropping to her knees beside him. Cecile's legs wobbled when she caught sight of her mother's pale, frightened face. Maman, she cried. What is it, Matilda? What has happened? Maman took Armand's face between her palms. He's burning with fever. Ellen, go and fetch the doctor. Matilda, help me get him to the sick room. Cecile listened, trying to blink away the tears that insisted on rolling out anyway. Tante Tay arrived breathless. Aurelia? Please send for Jean-Claude, Maman murmured. Cecile shivered. Maman never ever bothered Papa at his shop. Working together, Matilda and Maman lifted Armand, and Cecile watched them as they slowly and carefully carried her brother between them. She pressed herself against the low branches of a sweet olive tree so that they could pass. Not one of the grown-ups said a word to Cecile. It was as if she didn't exist. And when the courtyard was empty, she went up to the balcony. With her eyes closed, she lay in her hammock and swung it with one foot on the floor. She listened to the sound of the house. She could hear Maman inside, her voice still shaky, giving orders. Matilda's steps pounded to and fro, and doors slammed. Papa's shouts rang out as he came in. Ellen answered in a fearful sing-song. Then the doctor's calm words floated up the stairs. Everything became quiet. Someone banged loudly on the front door, making Cecile jump. Her rosary beads, forgotten in the hammock, fell to the floor. She reached to pick them up. She heard the front door open. Sorry, no visitors, Ellen said, her voice frightened. We have yellow fever here. Ellen had said it. Armand had yellow fever. Why had this happened, Cecile wondered, just when Armand had returned to them? Would he get well? MarieGrace had told her that this was a terrible sickness. Tears sprang to her eyes again as the thought that her dear brother would suffer. Hail Mary, full of grace, Cecile began to pray, but somehow she couldn't remember the words of the familiar prayer. Her hands were shaking, and somewhere Maman was crying. Cecile was all alone. Then she remembered that Armand had told her, "People are afraid because no one knows what may come," he'd said. She tightened her fingers firmly on the beads. I'll try not to be afraid, she told herself. I don't know what's coming for my family, but I'll try to be strong for Armand. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 3 of our book, Troubles for Cecile, book 4 from 1853. And next time, we will read chapter 4.